questions? There are none. And item number 6 is public input. And we have one request for input today from Naomi McCleary from the Going West Trust. So if Naomi's here and anyone who may be wishing to join her at the table, please come forward to the table. This is in relation to the first substantive item on the agenda, which is the transfer of Morris Shadbolt House and the Writers' Studio in Titirangi to the Going West Trust. So, Naomi, thank you very much for being here in person today. Welcome.
Thank you.
You may wish to introduce your colleague, and we've got 5 minutes, and then any for the presentation, and then usually there may be 1 or 2 questions. So, welcome here today, and the floor is yours.
Morena Councillors, and this is our archivist, our heritage archivist, Graham Burgess, and I think some of you will know him very well. Behind I have the director of the Going West Festival, James Littlewood, and our oral history archivist, Anna Fomelson, who are also here to support us today. Thank you for the privilege of speaking to you all this morning. I have an image that was going to come up, which is really just a scene setter for you. So my history with the Shadbolt House story goes back to the initial purchase of the property by Waitakere Council in 2006. Since then, with the support of the Going West Trust and the Waitakere Rangers Local Board, there's been a steady body of work undertaken to see this legacy project in Morris Shadbolt's name come to fruition. The report before you today chronicles much of that very well. There are a couple of points that I would like to make that a formal report can't cover. Peter Biggs, CEO of the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, in an opinion piece recently in the Sunday Star Times, had this to say: "There are aspects of human experience that cannot be reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. You cannot quantify the joy that comes in the recognition in the first few pages of a newly opened book that you've come across a masterpiece. Likewise, you cannot quantify the magic of the cultural value that comes from being in a house whose walls have seen the creation of a major writer's entire 40-year canon of work. This is Shadbolt House. My long experience with the McCann House artist residency, which is but a stone's throw from Arapito Road, affirms that the power of cultural association with one of Aotearoa's great artists is immeasurably powerful. The report does reference the fact that a residency benefits a small number of individual writers, but this is simply a starting point. That benefit ripples out to include readers, publishers, and the strength of the literary sector in general. A good residency program also interacts with public education and with schools and with tertiary institutions. This, along with a close interaction with the Going West Writers' Festival, is what the Shadbolt Residency project can be. COVID has changed our world. It has changed our conversation about what genres of writing might be supported through this residency program. We expect to respond to the renaissance in Māori and Pacifica writing. We intend to support Asian writers and those from other cultures. We also acknowledge that Morris Shadbolt paid the bills with long-form journalism, writing for the Reader's Digest and National Geographic. We wish to bring some focus to long-form journalism at this time as an antidote to the global tide of misinformation and disinformation. Conversations to date with leaders in this field indicate that this would bring immense value to the public discourse. Our hard achievements to date towards this project are as follows: a full conservation plan completed in 2013 by Graham Burgess and Lucy Treep as partner. Operational plans, 4 to date as the years have rolled by, and one completed recently which does take into account the COVID situation. Building assessments and reports, a couple by council and another by the trust. Geotech and engineering reports. These have been fed into the resource and building consents for the Stage 1 foundation repair, which is recent, and they have been recently approved. An oral history program underway to collect first-hand accounts of Morris Shadbolt, his life and his work. This is in the hands of our oral historian, Anna Fomelson. And early discussions with potential funders and partners, the Michael King Writers Centre, CNZ, tertiary providers, and leading writers. The Going West Trust is very mindful of the task ahead. Quotes for the initial foundation work sit at around $330,000. I think 10 years ago they sat at about 65,000 or something like that. While we work towards achieving that goal, we will also be designing and refining the residency program, building partnerships and structuring a management plan. But I'm going to finish with Morris's own words about this place. And it's from his memoir, From the Edge of the Sky. Much of my life, possibly too much, has been lived in a studio set above a serene New Zealand estuary. This hermit hideout, where I write now, is fringed with spindly mangroves, wreathed with rainforest, and always under siege from loudmouthed birds. A little later, he says, most of my dozen novels, and more than a score of stories beside, have taken form under this roof. My studio, call it a cabin or office if you wish, something less fancy, sits among the sea-filled foothills of the Waitakere Ranges, overlooking the vast Manukau Harbour, one of the world's largest. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Naomi, and it was a wonderful quote to end on. I think it sums it up quite well, and the skill of the writer, loud-mouthed birds, I like that. Graham, is there anything that you want to briefly add to that?
Thank you for the opportunity. I think one of the things that Naomi hasn't has described and hinted at is actually to do the McCann House and how the McCann House Trust, also supported by council, what a wonderful thing that has been in terms of the kaupapa that it brings to not only the West but to the whole of Auckland, and that you do have this rolling residency program. I became involved in that first through Naomi and was lucky enough to be part of the restoration of the house. And then I watched as it actually turned into this thing that actually keeps on generating sort of not only activity, but it actually sort of brings the community into the place. And I believe that that the model that the Going West Trust have running for this, it's not just for writers, it's actually going to generate amazing community value and actually community pride, which I think is a very important thing for council to be supporting.
Yeah, thank you, Graham, and I think the West has a lot to be proud of, actually, with McCann and with Morris Shadbolt, and I had the privilege of meeting with the people from the Colin McCann Trust relatively recently, but keeping that heritage alive from people that really have made their mark internationally as well as nationally is important. So I'll just open it up for questions. Are there any questions? I think you'll find a fairly sympathetic audience here today. Councillor Linda Cooper.
Thank you, Naomi and Graham. I guess I just want to ask you to kind of, because you were previously Public Arts Manager for Waitakere City, so you've got great credentials, right? And you started up Going West Festival. There's a whole lot of accolades I could give you, and I'm very thankful for the work you've done for West Auckland and Auckland in terms of literature. You able to just kind of get a sense of, I mean, I was there at the time in Waitakere when we purchased the house, but are you able to kind of give a vision of what, you know, the times that we were in, what we were looking to do, and also the ability of the trust to be able to raise those funds once the house goes into your own, or lease goes, you know, you get the lease so that you have got that ability to raise funds. Sorry, it's a bit.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. The vision always was one that was a sort of collaborative vision between the family, the Shadbolt family, and Waitakere Council at that time. We already had the model of the McCann House, as Graham has referred to, and so we had a model of best practice. And really the only thing that has changed in that vision is that the world has changed, and COVID has changed the world a little bit, which is why I made that reference to long-form journalism, because I think that that's something we probably wouldn't have even thought of back in those early days. So the vision remains consistent. It's just been contemporised, I suppose. In terms of the ability to raise that money, of course it will be a struggle, but we have access to the major funding bodies. I have already had a conversation with Lotteries Heritage, and indeed we are eligible to go to them, and we can continue to go back to them as the various stages of upgrading the house happen. Because as you will understand from the report, we've got to get the foundations sorted, basically, before we can get a full lease. And that's the proposal that is before you today. And yeah, in a way, that's the biggest hurdle. I think once we've got that hurdle, we'll be able to go back to the same funders for the other stages. Because, I mean, the house is... it can be made very comfortable. It's not flash, it's a family home. And I think that's one of its charms, really. The thing that image on the screen is from the seaward side. But when you're up in that house, the view down into Little Muddy Creek is just one of the most pristine views that you could possibly imagine. And of course, Little No Exit Street, it's the quietest place. The studio down the hill, which we hope to restore at some stage, is where he did a lot of his writing. But Morris also wrote in the house. So it's the perfect environment, and it can be made just warm and comfortable and a retreat for a writer to do a body of work. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Naomi. I don't have any other questions, so basically just a brief comment of really thanks to the Trust for the hours of voluntary work that you've put in, and I think this is a potential to be a win-win situation for council, local board, and for the Going West Trust. And what an absolute inspiration for a young writer to be in that place where Morris Shadbolt did so much of his writing and be surrounded by that aura. I think it's a great thing to do. So really appreciate the hard work that you've put in, and I'm sure we'll have support for the resolution before us today. So I'm going to ask Councillor Cooper to move and Councillor Henderson to second a motion of thanks for your presentation. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 To the contrary, no. I declare that carried, and you're most welcome to wait for the presentation of the local board, and then it'll be the first item on the agenda today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you.
Right.